Okay guys, I just wanted to go over Lab 8, the calculations again, since I left everybody confused during class, including myself. So let's just run through it again if you're still confused or if you're more confused than you were to start with, and make sure we've all got a handle on it. So I've gone ahead and put in some numbers. Remember that my numbers and your numbers are probably a little bit different because I just sort of made my numbers up and you actually weighed yours and have real values in there. So for my made up numbers, I used 10 grams exactly of copper sulfate pentahydrate, and I used 0.65 grams of aluminum. The molar masses we had already calculated, and when you take the mass and use your molar mass conversion factor, you get 0.04 moles of copper sulfate on the reactant side, and you get 0.024 moles of aluminum. And over here, if you want to look, I'm not going to go through all this again, but this is how I got to that these numbers. Taking the weights that are the masses that were weighed, and then converting them with the molar masses. Okay, so then the next part of it was to determine the limiting reactant, and we already know that aluminum is the limiting reactant, but let's just go back through and work it and make sure that you understand how to get it, because not only do you need it for the lab, but you also need it for the test and need to know how to do it. So what you're going to do then, I'm going to do it the second way, where we just calculate the, you take both of these moles and use them to calculate the moles of product that we would get. And then the one that produces the least product is our limiting reactant. And since we're going to have to do some calculations for copper, we want to know how much copper we made and how much theoretically we should have made, let's go ahead and calculate for copper. So if I have 0.04 moles of copper sulfate pentahydrate, draw my line. I'm just going to take that and use the molar ratios to calculate how much copper I'm going to make. And in this reaction, the molar ratios are the same. So 3 moles of copper sulfate is going to give me 3 moles of copper. Okay, 3 to 3 is the same thing as 1 to 1. So I'm going to produce 0.04 moles of copper with that much copper sulfate. Okay, then I take my aluminum, do exactly the same thing, 0.024 moles of aluminum. Okay, and I calculated this from the amount of aluminum that I weighed out and reacted. Use the mole ratios, 2 to 3 here. So 2 moles of aluminum produces 3 moles of copper. And when you punch that in, you get 0.036. Okay, so they're really close, but aluminum produces less copper than the copper sulfate does. So aluminum is our limiting reactant. Okay, so now here's where I got messed up before. I went back and used the copper sulfate to calculate the copper. But we can't do that. We have to use the aluminum to calculate the copper because that one is the limiting reactant. So I'm just going to go through here and actually erase this one. Get it out of our minds. Out of sight, out of mind. Because that one we don't need anymore. We only need the limiting reactant. So now, we started with this much aluminum. So this is how many moles of copper we should have made. And if we take the molar mass of copper, which is 63.55 grams of copper. That will give us 2.28, so I'm just going to round it to 2.29. 2.29. Okay, and really, this only has two significant figures, so we could even go to 2.3 with it. Basically 2.3 grams of copper. Now that is your theoretical yield. Okay, so if we look over here, I just made up some numbers over here. I know everybody got more product than they were supposed to, so I just made mine work that way too. I said, okay, the filter paper weighed 2 grams and my total product was 4.4, so my final product was 2.4 grams. So this is my actual yield. And this is my theoretical yield. And so we want to calculate what our percent yield was. So we take our actual yield, divide it by our theoretical yield, and multiply by 100. And you can see right now that we've got more than 100% yield, and that's okay. I mean, obviously something went wrong, but it is what it is. So just go through and calculate, and so we got 104%. Well, we know that we didn't really get 104%. We've got some impurities in there. We probably didn't get all the copper sulfate washed out. We probably had maybe a little bit of aluminum flex in there, maybe some side reaction stuff going on. Maybe we didn't even get it dried perfectly. So those are all possibilities and reasons, and that's okay if you get over 100% yield. It is what it is, so you just accept it. So that's your yield. Then the only other thing that's left here would be the moles produced, and you just take the grams that you had and convert that to moles with your molar mass of copper. And I got I guess I can go 0.378 or 0, I'm sorry, 0.0378 moles. Okay, and so that's pretty much the calculations for lab number 8.